Hi, this is Dan MacDonald. This is my 1962 Chevrolet Yellow Dog. It's a K10 means it's four-wheel drive, half-ton, short step-side box. I've owned this truck since 1976. I used it at Brainerd International Raceway, towing race cars. I've used it on sports car rallies, performance rallies. I've used it at stock car tracks with sports cars because none of the stock car track rescue people knew how to cut open a sports car in order to get a crashed driver out. As you can see, it's modified a little bit. It looks pretty stock on the outside except for the wheels and the tires, but the only part of it that's still original are the two axle housings. The transfer case is original, the frame rails, and the cab itself. The hood, fenders, back fenders, most of the box, all the electrical, the transmission, the engine, the bumpers, all that's been changed over the years. It's got a 400 cubic inch small block engine. It's been blueprinted. It's got a turbo 400 transmission with a shift kit. Completely bulletproof for all these years. I used it recovering race cars and recovering rally cars. It was purpose built as a rally sweep vehicle designed to recover rally cars when they crash. The engine has a quadrajet carburetor. It's pretty normal. It's built for durability. It's got pretty big clearances on the crankshaft, and it runs heavy oil. HEI ignition. The exhaust manifolds are a Corvette 2.5 inch ram's horn, 2.5 inch exhaust all the way to the back. The exhaust cross over from one side to the other to get around the transfer case, and so the two exhaust systems are the same length. The front end has been lightened dramatically. There's a lot of stuff that's been taken out. The inner fender panels, we'll open the hood in a little bit and you can see that. The hood hinges have been removed. The inner fender panel has been replaced with plastic. The radiator support's been changed to cut down the weight there. The batteries have been moved to the back. There are two batteries in the back. The steering has been changed from the original ball recirculating to later style pickup truck integrated power steering. It's got power disc brakes from a later truck on it. It's cruise control, all that good stuff. As you can see, the lighting has been changed. There's no hood latch at all, just these two pins. And no spring counterbalances for the hinges. They're just small tabs welded to the cowl to support the hood. You can see the late model power brakes. It's got auxiliary horns, improved electrical, 4 shocks in the front. These are adjustable Ranchos. They've been on the truck a while, but they work wonderfully. The fan shroud is custom. The radiator is out of a late model Buick 455 or some other big station wagon or something. I don't remember exactly. I made the air cleaner housing. This truck has been a work truck all its life. It was before I got it. It worked for the DNR in Oregon. I bought it from the second owner who was running a rental agency, cement mixers, hammers, whatever you wanted to rent, he rented it. And he was using the truck to deliver rented equipment to customer job sites when I spotted it. I talked him out of it and drove it from Oregon here to Minnesota, after which it became my daily driver for a couple of years. Of course, a couple of Minnesota winters were enough that the rocker boxes rusted off the cab, the front fenders, the hood rusted, everything rusted pretty bad. I replaced the what sheet metal I could, welded on new rocker boxes, and never drove it in the winter again. Consequently, it hasn't had any more significant rust problems of any kind. You can see that the hood's been gutted. I guess you can see that before. There was all the structure in the front of the hood that holds the hood latch been removed. The object of all of this being to reduce the weight in the front of the truck and improve the handling. Because when it goes out in the woods for a sports car rally, you don't want to have handling problems. When I got the truck, initially the front suspension had about 2 inches of travel when the axle went steel on steel against the frame. I modified the bump stops, the axle retaining plates, the spring retaining plates, and changed it so that there's about 6 inches of travel now, and added the extra shocks in the front. I turned the shocks straight vertical instead of at an angle like they are from the factory to make them more effective as the wheel travels. And it never bottomed the suspension again after that while we were crashing along forest roads chasing rally cars at relatively high speeds. On a rally stage it would run anywhere from 20 to 80 miles an hour with this truck. No problem at all keeping up with the back markers in the rally. The axle truss is interesting to me. Of course I welded it, but it came about because I bent the axle at one point on a rally, and the truss is welded on. The end brackets go against the balls of the steering knuckles in the space that the steering knuckle doesn't use. So they did not limit the steering in any way. And it's made out of a high strength 5/8 rod with grade 8 nuts on the ends so they can be tightened. And I snugged it up until I started to get some change in the camber, and then I backed it off just a little bit to go back kind of to 100% preload without distorting the axle in the down direction. So when I hit something with the thing running pretty fast down a gravel road, the truss takes almost all the stress from that impact and that loading. The steering is stock, the tie rod is stock original. The components are all 3/4 ton size, even though it's a 1/2 ton truck. The frame rails are the exact same cross section as 3/4 ton truck frame is for 1962. So the basic structure of the truck is pretty stout. The front axle, of course, is a Dana 44, 392 gears. The rear end is an Eaton, a lot of times referred to as a corporate rear end, but it's actually built by Eaton. It has a 390 gear set in it. Those are both stock gear sets, original to the truck. The rear end has a skid plate underneath the differential, and that is to prevent the rocks and debris thrown by the front tires from destroying the rear U-joint and the rear pumpkin. The iron of the rear center section is eroded away pretty significantly by the blast of rocks and gravel from the front wheels. The drive shafts are stock original to the truck. The transfer case is the original Timken T221 4-shaft case. The same transfer case that GM used in the 2.5 ton trucks in World War II. And it was used up until about 1968 or so in Blazers and pickup trucks. But the latest ones were mounted directly to the transmission. This one's divorced, so there's a shaft about 1 foot long between the transfer case and the Turbo 400 transmission. That shaft I fabricated. The others, like I said, are from the factory. Okay, the front bumper on the truck is 2-inch aluminum tube. The main reason for building it like it is for lightweight, to provide two places for the driving lights, which are Hella Rally 2000s. They're 100-watt, 8-inch diameter lights, very effective. And to mount the two tow points for vehicle recovery on rally stations. The bumper, although it's quite a bit bigger than a stock bumper, only weighs about half what the original steel bumper weighed. The left toe point has been broken off and repaired. There's a steel bracket there that holds that clevis. It was overstressed and probably should not have been made out of aluminum in the first place. Okay, the rear axle is an Eaton. It's the original to the truck. Original to every 1962 truck, I think. 9 3/8 ring gear. Open differential. Both differential front and rear are open. The lift blocks under the springs are factory original to this truck. I have not lifted this truck at all. The springs are original. They've not been modified, although I think I replaced them. I think they're new, but original spec. The gas tank in the middle is custom made. It's got heavy plate on the bottom and the leading edge in the front and the front side to protect against rock damage, flying rocks mostly. The shocks in the back are in their original location, although again they're adjustable, heavy modern shocks. The back bumper is custom made, all aluminum. Started with a 6-inch by a 3-inch channel or 2-inch channel, half-inch thick, and all the bracketry is half-inch thick, all welded, one piece. It mounts a 6,000-pound winch in the center, and the winch is controlled from a pendant right up here in the back of the bed, or also from the cab. There's a switch on the dash, and the winch can be run from there. There's a 3-foot leader chain on the end of the winch, so it can be wrapped around an object if necessary, so it doesn't damage the cable. The brakes are original to the truck. They're 11 by 2-inch standard Bendix type brakes. The back bumpers hand fabricated, 6-inch channel, half-inch thick. The winch is mounted right directly to the bumper. This is the major tow point we use for rallying. It's also mounted to the bumper with two 3/4 inch grade 8 bolts. This is a solid aluminum tow point. Also is buried through the top of the bumper. It's mounted with these two grade 8 bolts. The rope can be wrapped around this and used for towing cars. These amber lights on either side are warning lights. On the top and on the bottom they're turn signals. This being the brake and the tail light. The turn signals are down here. There's no tail light or a turn signal function up there. These brackets on either side are for the vinyl tailgate. It slides into this track, is anchored on each side, cuts a lot of weight off from a standard tailgate. And then there's a tonneau cover that fits over the top. Again, it mounts to this track in the front, slides in from the side. There are two bows that go across from between these two sockets, 4 sockets, to support the center of the tonneau cover, and it fastens in the back. That's a gas filler, obviously. Goes down into the tank, right in the top of the tank, to vent it out the side into the wheel well. I always carry a full-size spare. The other rally equipment is not in here right now, but there'd be a jack and shovel and axe and a backboard, first aid equipment, oxygen, everything imaginable. The back of the truck typically was completely full on a rally. 2 batteries, each with their own box, and a permanent jumper cable connection right here. Not that with 2 batteries and a big alternator you normally need jumping, but that's for other people. The light bar is composed of an arrow stick used for warning to the rear, and a Federal twin beam. These 2 lights are chained together. There's only one motor in there, it turns both lights. Both of these are relatively correct for this here truck if it was in a rescue service. The taxi light is just for giggles. There's no real reason for it to be on the truck other than I found it in a junkyard and I liked it, so I put it on. These lights, there are 2 work lights on the back that face the rear, illuminate the back quite nicely, and there's an alley light on either side that shines off into the woods in case we would have to work off to the side of the truck. We can turn those lights on, and that's usually a dark spot when you're trying to get something done out in the woods. Not in this truck, we got plenty of light. That's a hand fabricated brush guard to keep the branches from knocking the lights off the top of the truck. And there are antennas for CB and 2 different FM radios, ham radios. Okay, this is a dash cluster. This is the original surround that came with the truck. Of course, it's a custom panel. All the standard stuff. I have volts and amps over here. Temperature for the transmission and for the engine. Obviously speedo. Oil pressure. This is the gas gauge and the tach. Turn signals are here, and I have oil pressure light, ammeter light, and this is the alternator light. This is a temperature light for the transmission. This is a temperature light for the engine, and this is a high beam light. And over here we have the stock ashtray, which nobody's used for 30-40 years. Stock heater control, so the stock heater. This is the electrical center. The co-driver has access to all these circuit breakers. All the circuits are on separate circuit breakers, and they pop out right in front of the co-driver, so if something goes wrong, those are easily available while we're driving, and nobody has to crawl under the dash. And there's a duplicate set of idiot lights here with legends on them that maybe we can light those up, and you can see a couple of them. Low oil pressure, an alternator. Some of these are rigged to run with outside lights. Some of them are trouble for the engine or the transmission. On the far right, the Halda Twin Master, that's a dual odometer. Like each side of each segment can be reset. It can run forward or backwards while you're driving, or it can be set to stand still while you're driving, and those all have rally functions. And on the roll cage right beside it is the amplifier for the intercom system between the driver and the co-driver. The truck is loud, and in order to avoid shouting and the consequent loss of voice over the course of an 8 or 10 hour day, the driver and the co-driver will wear an intercom. And in the center console here, you can see all these switches. The guarded ones would normally not be operated. Head, tail, and dome lights are here, and the wiper switch, standard stuff off the regular dash. This is the original wiper switch because it's complicated, and I just mounted it here rather than try to duplicate it in some other kind of switches. Then the driving lights, there's a relay underneath here that prevents these from operating unless the headlights are on and in high beam. That's because this truck is driven on the street on regular highways between rally stages, so it has to be completely street legal, so obviously you can't run these lights on the highway. And then the overhead rotary lights, the alley lights, the rear lights, both alley lights come on together. Horn is here because there's a switch in the steering wheel. The driver can operate with his thumb that triggers the radio, the ham radio, into transmit mode. So a driver can speak through the intercom system to the ham radio by just thumbing the switch on the steering wheel. Then there's a engine compartment light under the hood, and this is a winch control. You can run it in or out from right here. Down below we have the primary ham radio. This is connected to an amplifier, which is controlled by these switches and these lights. It's mounted underneath the seat, the driver's seat, that raises this from a 25 watt radio to 170 watt output. So you can really talk a long ways on that ham radio. This is a standard 5 watt CB. It's an old Johnson 23 channel, but it's extreme high quality. They quit making these when they went to 40 channels. So I've kept this one. I never needed 40 channels anyway. This is an accessory switch for all this stuff, and that accessory function would normally be on the ignition switch, but in this case I chose to hook it up to a separate switch to reduce the load on the ignition switch. Of course, this is a standard AM/FM radio, like any other vehicle. These are controls for an outside PA system that's separate from any of this other equipment. A speaker up under the under the hood. And then down here we have two battery disconnect switches, one for each of the batteries in the back. And if these are off, nothing works. You can't start anything. There's no power at all except here, unless these are turned on. And you can select one or both. This is an auxiliary speaker for another radio. There's a fire extinguisher under that corner of the dash. It's halon, because if I ever had a fire in this truck, I didn't want to have to clean up dry chemical. There's a 110 volt inverter up under the dash in case it's needed. That's rarely, if ever, used, but if we need 110 volts, we've got a small one. This is a map light for the navigator to use. This above here is a second standby map light in case that one quits working. In the overhead console, we've got two more radio speakers. We have two flashlights, one on either side here. Okay, these clips on the windshield, there's two of them here. These are designed to hold a placard at the top of the windshield. For when we were at the racetrack, they required us to have a sign on there for insurance purposes, and so that would sit up underneath here as a piece of plastic. Over on this side is the control for the arrow stick and a little bit of memorabilia from various events. In the back, right up here, is a spotlight that's aimed down at the dash and illuminates this panel at night, so you can see these switches. Otherwise there's no illumination here at all. In the middle is a console for junk and whatever. It's got a clipboard clip on the top. The radio speakers, you can see behind my head here, they're stereo speakers that are connected to the AM/FM radio, act like headphones. There's two of them on this side and two of them on that side. And that way, even when we're cruising down the road and it's really loud in here, you can still hear the tunes. Pretty important stuff. Did you get my fuzzy dice? Sometimes you need a little more idle, so there's a hand throttle here. You can crank this out and get the engine speed up in case you want alternator or for some other reason. The shift lever, you'll notice it's got quite a curve to it, as does the turn signal lever. They're both kind of pointed up at the sky, and that's so you can climb in and out of here without snagging your feet on those levers. The turn signal lever's been broken off several times, and then I got wise and bent it up. Got tilt steering wheel in it. Put that where you want. I usually have it up high to get in and out, and then I drop it down a couple notches for driving. We've got water bottle holders on both sides of the cab. Those are before cars had cup holders. You know, this thing never had a cup holder in it. The main part of the cage is 2-inch diameter 8th wall tubing, bigger than anything recommended by SCCA or SCORE off-road racing, just to make sure, because this truck is pretty heavy by racing standards. And I put it in here because I was afraid that I might crash it and hurt myself, and I didn't want to do that. That's when I put in the seats and the 6-point belts and the cage. These doors have been gutted for weight reasons, to get rid of weight. The window regulators are gone, and in place are these straps. You got to pull the window down and pull it back up again. Velcro holds it up. The inner panel originally, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, there's a big steel panel, a trim panel that goes on here, weighs about 10 pounds. That went. Then the rest of the door, most of it is enclosed with steel, with a couple of holes for the latch and the window regulator. This one's been cut out all the way around the perimeter and replaced with this aluminum sheet in a map pocket. I took about 60 pounds off each door, off this door and off of that door, replaced all the windows with plastic. The back window in the cab is plastic, along with all the other lighting in the front, with taking out the inner fender panels and all that stuff. The front end got so light, I had to take a leaf out of each front spring to bring the front end of the truck back down to where it could actually be driven. It was entirely too high. Now it's back down approximately where it was from the factory. This is as Chevrolet designed it for height, and the tires are approximately the same diameter as the original tires. It had 750/16 8-plies on split rim wheels originally, 5-inch wide split rim wheels.